Inside 8213 West Summerdale Avenue, warm air blasted from the floor vents, dripping with a thick, sweet rot. 4 feet directly below the police officer's boots lay 26 decomposing bodies.
Notorious serial killer John Wayne Gacy played a clown at children's parties while murdering at least 33 young men.
On December 11, 1978, 15-year-old Robert Peist vanished from Des Plaines, Illinois. He was working his shift at Nissan Pharmacy when contractor John Wayne Gacy walked in to discuss a remodeling job. Peist told his mother he was stepping outside for a quick minute to ask about a higher-paying construction position. He never walked back through those glass doors. Des Plaines police officers immediately focused on Gacy. He was the last person seen talking to the teenager. Investigators ran a background check on the 36-year-old business owner. On paper, Gacy looked like a pillar of the community. He ran his own firm, PDM Contractors. He organized local parades, held key roles as a Democratic precinct captain, and frequently dressed as a clown to entertain children at local hospital events. He lived in a well-maintained ranch-style brick home on Summerdale Avenue in unincorporated Norwood Park.
At the time, Gacy was a Democratic volunteer campaign worker.
When officers pulled up to the property, the quiet suburban street offered no visible red flags. Neat landscaping, custom brickwork, and a manicured lawn shielded the property from neighbor suspicion. Gacy greeted officers with total confidence, offering coffee while explaining away his criminal past. He had served time back in Iowa in 1968 for sodomy, yet local political ties allowed him to move freely without raising local alarms. Detectives refused to buy his relaxed demeanor. They secured a search warrant for his home, looking specifically for Peist's belongings or receipts connecting him to the pharmacy. That routine search warrant revealed an odor no disguise could hide. Sub-zero Chicago winds whipped against the front door as Des Plaines officers executed their search warrant on December 13, 1978. Stepping inside, heat from the forced air furnace hit them instantly. The blast carried a foul, heavy stench of decaying flesh that coated the back of their throats. Gacy did not flinch. He walked into the kitchen, poured cold sodas for the detectives, and blamed the stench on structural flaws. He claimed that broken sewer pipes under the foundation regularly flooded the crawl space during winter thaws. He insisted damp insulation and backup sewage created the sickening odor, promising he had poured lime under the boards to neutralize it. Sitting inside a small ring tray was a photo film processing receipt from Nissan Pharmacy. The ticket number matched the exact batch processed by Robert Peist's co-worker on the night that he vanished. Gacy claimed he had picked up the receipt during a previous store visit, but the paper trail directly tied him to the boy's last known location. Detectives kept their discoveries quiet while cataloging items across the residence. They logged a pair of handcuffs, a syringe, a wooden turnbuckle device, and several driver's licenses belonging to young men who did not live at the address. The pharmacy receipt gave police the legal leverage needed to place Gacy under round-the-clock physical surveillance while securing a second, more comprehensive search warrant. The mounting pressure forced Gacy into making a single fatal confession. 14 detectives maintained an unbroken 24-hour tail on Gacy for 8 consecutive days. Des Plaines police officers followed his vehicle to business meetings, restaurants, and the late-night gas station stops, never letting him out of sight for even a second. The relentless psychological strain finally broke Gacy on December 21st. Sitting with his defense attorneys inside his home, he admitted to killing a young man named John Bukovich, who had vanished 2 years prior after a heated paycheck dispute. Gacy claimed the killing was purely self-defense during an unexpected physical fight over money owed. He walked investigators out to his detached garage, picked up a can of bright orange spray paint, and drew a bold X directly onto the cold concrete floor. He told officers Butkovich was his only victim, buried beneath 4 inches of freshly poured cement to hide the fatal accident. Detectives immediately suspected that he was downplaying his crimes to avoid a massive murder investigation. While uniformed officers brought in heavy jackhammers to break through the marked concrete in the garage, another investigator searched a small utility closet attached to the main house structure. Pushing past stacked paint cans, power tools, lawn chemical bags, and hardware supplies, the detective noticed a small rectangular wooden hatch built flush into the hallway floorboards. It was secured by a simple metal sliding latch and deliberately hidden beneath a thick, cheap throw rug. The hatch provided direct physical access to the pitch-black, unlit, and dirty space running beneath the entire main living room floor. Detectives challenged Gacy's version the moment the wooden hatch swung open. A narrow opening led into a cramped crawl space that was stretching beneath the entire ranch house. One officer went ahead and lowered himself through the access point, equipped with a flashlight, while others followed him carrying shovels, evidence bags, and protective masks. The ceiling barely cleared their shoulders, forcing the investigators to crawl across damp earth instead of walking upright. In total, the confined chamber measured roughly 40 feet long and 30 feet across. Exposed pipes crossed overhead while electrical wiring disappeared into the darkness. Thick patches of white lime covered sections of the soil. Officers immediately recognized the material as an attempt to reduce the smell released during decomposition rather than a solution for moisture or sewage. Excavation began near areas where the lime appeared heaviest. Small fragments of human bone surfaced beneath the white powder. A second dig uncovered more skeletal pieces, alongside deteriorated clothing fibers buried in the same patch. The discovery halted every claim Gacy had made about a single accidental killing. Crime scene supervisors immediately expanded the search area, marking each excavation point before disturbing additional ground. Every shovel of earth revealed fresh evidence that the crawlspace concealed far more than one victim. Investigators photographed every fragment in place, recorded precise measurements, and sealed each recovery site to preserve the chain of custody before continuing deeper beneath the house. Unearthing the first set of remains completely shattered his story.
Once we've identified a potential family or candidate, we're looking for all of their children, whether there's any proof of life on them after the time of death of the John or
Forensic technicians worked methodically through each marked area, removing soil one thin layer at a time. Human remains emerged at different depths, often overlapping because of the limited space available beneath the house. Personal effects surfaced beside skeletons, including clothing fragments, jewelry, belts, and identification belonging to missing young men. Each discovery required photographs, measurements, labeled containers, and detailed documentation before recovery continued. Meanwhile, Gacy sat in custody speaking with investigators. He produced a hand-drawn diagram showing where he claimed bodies had been placed beneath the residence. Detectives compared the sketch against their excavation grids. As more graves were uncovered, the drawing repeatedly matched locations already producing human remains. The map became another powerful piece of evidence, confirming that the burials had been deliberate, organized, and carefully remembered. Gacy had planned for concealment long before police ever reached Summerdale Avenue. No empty ground remained beneath the house by the middle of 1978. Years of repeated burials had filled the crawl space, while additional graves became physically impossible. Faced with that limitation, Gacy abandoned the concealment method that had hidden most of his victims beneath the floorboards. Instead, he began to transport the bodies away from the property under the cover of complete darkness. Investigators later established that he was vigilant enough to drive all the way to Interstate 55 bridge, crossing the Des Plaines River and strategically choosing a location where the powerful current of the water could carry away evidence well before any kind of discovery could be made. Rather than burying the final victims, he pushed their bodies directly into the river below. A total of 5 victims were disposed of using this method. Among them was Robert Peist, whose disappearance had finally drawn police to Summerdale Avenue. Search teams later recovered several more bodies from the river, while the other bodies had traveled considerable distances before being located downstream. Back beneath the house, the excavation crews continued uncovering victim after victim. Every recovery widened the investigation, revealing one of the largest serial murder inquiries in American history. Detectives coordinated constantly with forensic specialists, investigators, and neighboring police departments as the number of unidentified remains continued rising. Establishing each victim's identity became the next challenge, demanding techniques that stretched the limits of forensic science available in 1978. Recovering dozens of skeletal remains created an unprecedented forensic challenge. The stainless steel examination tables at the Cook County Medical Examiner's Office quickly filled with remains recovered from beneath 8213 West Summerdale Avenue. Each set of bones arrived with limited information attached. There were no names, confirmed histories, or any modern genetic databases available to instantly reveal identities. Investigators had only fragments of evidence and a growing list of missing young men connected to the Chicago area.
You might be witnessing one of the most horrible crimes, perhaps, in a century.
Chief Medical Examiner Dr. Robert Stein directed the identification process using the tools available in 1978. Dental records became one of the most reliable methods because teeth often survive conditions that destroy other biological evidence. Investigators contacted families of missing persons, collected dental charts from previous appointments, and compared those records against recovered remains. Forensic anthropologists examined age estimates, height measurements, bone development, and signs of previous injuries. They worked through hundreds of details because every unidentified victim represented a family still waiting for answers. The process required patience, accuracy, and cooperation between police departments across multiple locations. Without DNA testing, investigators relied on traditional forensic science and human persistence. Each identification required building a complete picture from incomplete evidence. A dental record, an old medical file, or a family memory could finally transform an unknown victim into a person with a name, a history, and loved ones waiting for closure. The work continued long after the excavation ended because nameless victims left investigators searching for answers across state lines. 4 months after investigators entered the property, the house itself became the final piece of evidence removed from Summerdale Avenue. On April 9, 1979, demolition crews arrived with heavy machinery and began dismantling the ranch-style home where the murders had remained hidden for years. The demolition was not performed simply because the property had become infamous. Investigators wanted to eliminate any remaining areas where evidence could potentially survive. Crews removed sections of flooring, broke apart foundation slabs, and excavated contaminated soil beneath the structure. Every piece removed from the site was examined, documented, and transported away. After the demolition ended, the land remained empty for years. The vacant lot became a constant reminder of what had happened beneath an ordinary neighborhood street. Residents watched as the location changed from a private home into a symbol of a case that exposed failures in other similar investigations and community awareness. In 1986, a new residence was eventually constructed on the property under a reassigned address. The physical connection to Gacy's house disappeared, but the investigation continued, influencing law enforcement practices. The case files never truly closed after John Wayne Gacy's execution in 1994. The several unidentified victims recovered from the crawl space and Duplain River had left investigators with incomplete records and families still searching for missing relatives. The Cook County Sheriff's Office eventually reopened portions of the investigation using technology unavailable during the original excavation. Advances in DNA analysis allowed specialists to extract genetic material from preserved bone samples and compare those profiles against relatives of missing individuals. Evidence collected from a 1978 crime scene was suddenly capable of revealing identities more than 30 years later. In 2011, one unidentified victim was finally named as William Bundy. Investigators compared DNA from recovered remains with samples provided by relatives, confirming his identity after decades without answers. The discovery demonstrated how modern forensic methods could solve questions that traditional identification techniques could not complete. Another breakthrough arrived in 2017 when investigators identified James Hakinson as one of the remaining victims. His family had spent years without knowing what happened, and the genetic match provided long-awaited confirmation. Each identification restored a name to someone who had previously been known only by an unknown victim designation.
Alexander was found in Gacy's crawl space in 1978, was finally identified recently using his DNA and a genealogy website. Researchers narrowed it down to Alexander's parents.
The process relied heavily on forensic genealogy, which combines DNA analysis with family history research. Specialists examine genetic connections, build family trees, and compare possible relationships until investigators can narrow down a person's identity. However, several victims connected to the Gacy investigation still remain unidentified. Investigators continue reviewing records, testing available evidence, and comparing genetic profiles in hopes of completing the list of names lost beneath Summerdale Avenue. The discoveries prove that removing a building could not remove the unanswered questions surrounding the crimes. The investigation moved beyond one house and became a decades-long effort to restore identities, correct forgotten records, and provide families with the truth they had waited years to find. After the original ranch-style house was demolished, the vacant lot remained untouched for several years before a new residential home was constructed in 1986. The property received a reassigned address separating the modern residence from the location's dark history. Today, the site appears like any other suburban property. There are no visible signs showing what investigators discovered beneath the original foundation. The crawl space, concrete floors, and walls that concealed evidence for years are gone. What remains is a normal residential lot located on a street that once became the center of international attention. Following the investigation, law enforcement agencies increased cooperation between jurisdictions and improved systems for tracking missing persons. The case became part of a broader shift toward treating missing person reports with greater urgency, especially when multiple disappearances showed similar patterns. The forensic challenges also influenced future investigations. Recovering dozens of victims from a single property forced experts to improve excavation methods, evidence handling procedures, and victim identification techniques. The lessons learned from Summerdale Avenue continued shaping how investigators approach complex crime scenes. More than 4 decades later, the house is gone, but the investigation remains a reference point in criminal history. The property showed how ordinary surroundings could hide extraordinary crimes, and how overlooked warning signs could allow them to continue. The greatest consequence was not the demolition of one building. It was the realization that appearances alone could never reveal what was happening beneath the surface.